Good morning and good afternoon. I'm Dr. Bob Mortlock, the Principal Investigator for the Acquisition Research Program, ARP. On behalf of ARP, welcome to the 18th Annual Acquisition Research Symposium. Let me say that again, 18th Annual Acquisition Research Symposium. This is our first completely virtual symposium, and while we missed the opportunity to see you all in person, we look forward to the opportunity of expanding the reach of the symposium. This year's event has the largest number of registered attendees ever, 800 plus senior leaders, acquisition professionals, warfighters, policymakers, and researchers across government, industry, and academia, all sharing their thoughts and perspectives and highlighting the impact of applied research in the acquisition sciences, from program management, contracting, financial management, logistics, engineering, cost estimating, and the integration management of emerging technologies into warfighting systems, helping to bridge the valley of death and delivering capabilities into the hands of our warfighters. I hope you take the opportunity over the next 3 days to engage with both senior acquisition leaders and researchers and ask them the hard question. Ask them the so what of their research. I think you'll both be impressed and inspired by the impactful applied research in acquisition sciences being done by our community. At this time, I have the pleasure of formally introducing Vice Admiral Dave Lewis as the MPS Chair of Acquisition. Having been a keynote speaker in past symposium, Admiral Lewis is no stranger to ARP or the symposium. Admiral Lewis's acquisition credentials are as impressive as they get, having served as the Director of the Defense Contract Management Agency, Commander, Space and Naval Warfare Systems Command, PEO Ships, Vice Commander of the Naval Sea Systems Command, and Program Management, Aegis Shipbuilding, just to highlight a few. Vice Admiral Lewis, we are honored to have you join our team, and Vice Admiral Lewis, over to you.
Thank you, Bob. And again, I'd like to welcome everybody to this 18th Annual Research Symposium and our very first virtual symposium. And as Bob mentioned, we have a record attendees, 882. Normally, this event would have about 375 attendees if we were doing it in person here in Monterey. Regrettably, we couldn't do that. I brought you some California poppies there behind me just to let you know what you're missing. But I envision future events will be some sort of hybrid, some attending, some virtual. I'd like to keep the high attendance and the high number of participants. First, I just like to go through the numbers. As I said, 882 participants. It's a 3-day event instead of a 2-day event. We've got over 80 speakers, moderators, panel members, and researchers. That's a 30% increase over who would normally be presenting at this symposium. And there are 66 technical research reports, again, a 30% increase over prior years. And that was based on the number of submissions we had. We didn't go out and scare people out of the brushes. People came to us with their work, and we've accommodated them with this format and this duration. These 3 days have brought the very best, the premier, top of the heap thinkers and practitioners of the acquisition world together. So this is our World Series. This is our Super Bowl. This is our Wimbledon, okay, where we have the very best gathered to display our skills and talents. Private universities, public universities, private think tanks, Defense Department research facilities like NPS, and even some international participants have gathered to present, discuss, listen, learn, and lead our community forward. So my job here is to welcome you, done, introduce President Rondeau from Naval Postgraduate School, and Ms. Cummings, Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. But first, a couple of comments of my own. We live in dangerous, uncertain times. If this were a 16th century navigation chart, we would be sailing in a part of the chart labeled "There Be Dragons." None of us have ever been or experienced times like these, unless we're an adult in 1945. Uncertain military technology, emerging new science, uncertain economics, uncertain world politics, emerging nations, declining nations, a complex business environment, competition for resources, some of which we didn't even know existed a couple of years ago. These are not unprecedented times, however. Though for those of you that were adults in 1945, you lived through the interwar years between World War I and World War II. Years, in my view, were just like now. 1870 to 1906 were also There Be Dragons years of rampant technological change, economic upheaval, national unrest, and unprecedented levels of military innovation. Acquisition failures from those times are well known. German needle guns decimated French troops in 1870, while French Mitrailleuse machine guns sat unused. American submarines tried to sink ships with torpedoes that had never been tested. Hitler built tanks when he should have been building fighters, and he could never manage a military supply chain. Admiral Tirpitz could never break Krupp's monopoly on weapons production, creating a too small high seas fleet in World War I. Imperial Japan went to war with no secure sources for their raw materials. Britain had an inadequate industrial base. There were acquisition successes too. Soviet T-34 tanks revolutionized tank design using a technology that the US Army had rejected. Grumman Iron Works, Boeing and Consolidated built tough, incredibly resilient, easily repairable fighters and bombers, dominating the skies. American industry and academia flooded the battlefield with American production, American technology, and American science. That is why we are here. America did not fail in those uncertain times. We thrived. We thrived because of our ability to embrace new technology, to correctly harness its value, control its faults. Acquisition is the process, the methodology of fielding new technology, putting it into the hands of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, effective, affordable, and with doctrine that works. Acquisition research shows us what works, what does not, and provides us insights and guidance into new and better ways of serving our warfighters during these new, dangerous, but not unprecedented times. There is also a sea change underway in acquisition research. While the NPS ARP has been sponsoring research through grants, funded research, and student thesis for 18 years, and we're very proud of that history, we have done so without consistent, overt support from DoD or even Navy leadership, always scrapping for funding to sponsor 10 to 12 research proposals and 100 student projects each year, often with minimal or no leadership support. Therefore, last year, Congress directed the department set up a top-level sponsored and funded acquisition research program, which was recently stood up as the Acquisition Innovation Research Center, ARIC. There's an open call for papers to fund 5 to 7 research proposals, which closes this Friday. These will be awarded by contract vice grants. I and ARP are strong supporters of this new initiative. ARIC gives acquisition research both congressional and senior departmental leadership and top-down research objectives, which will move acquisition research up to the next stage of performance. NPS ARP is a collaborating member of ARIC and will continue to conduct acquisition research at NPS under this new rubric. We have a panel this Thursday, which will discuss the past, present, and future of acquisition research. I encourage you to attend. I'd like to move on to introduce Vice Admiral Anne Rondeau, President of Naval Postgraduate School since 2019. She's a prior president of the National Defense University and College of DuPage. She was commissioned in 1974 as a naval officer, and I would call her among the first generation of modern women officers. I was in the Navy back then. It was a tough Navy for women. And she and her peers are pioneers, were pioneers in bringing women into the mainstream of the Naval Officer Corps. She's been a White House Fellow. She's been a member of the Keynote Strategic Studies Group. She's been a military advisor to the Attorney General. She's commanded the Naval Training Center, Great Lakes, and NSA Sigonella, and had several other operational tours with Military Sea Lift Command. As a flag officer, she rose in the naval training community and served as the director of the Navy staff and as deputy commander Transcom. And she is the intellectual leader behind Sea Power for Defense. So it's my pleasure to introduce President Rondeau.
Thanks, Dave, and welcome to everybody. It is terrific to have this great audience here. And Dave, I want to thank you and your team for your leadership and making a difference already in the short amount of time that you've been here as the director of NPS's Acquisition Research Program. You and the colleagues that you have at NPS and around DoD, you're making a difference, and I thank you very much. I want to thank everybody who's here for investing their time, and to our speakers and our panelists. This is an incredible time. So let me first start off with saying Dave gave us some great statistics and figures. But the one figure that he did not give that is really important to this symposium is the average age in this symposium is 45. That is greatly promising to understand that we have in front of us professionals in acquisition who are the leaders today and for the future. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was Dave set up beautifully the context, and he set it up brilliantly. So my job here is not to set up the context, because he's done that and we understand it. It is to provoke where we now need to go. So the title, the theme of this entire event, this symposium, is Creating Synergy for Informed Change. Creating synergy, coming together and making it work for informed change. My challenge to this audience is, this is the largest congregation of people in the ARP Symposium life of 18 years. The average age is 45, and yet there are a lot of seasoned professionals in this group. How do we make a difference, and is the time now? So Admiral Lewis gave us a challenge about the time that we are in. And I would say that synergy is not something that most researchers really practice. Researchers tend to practice doing their own thing because that's what brings grant money, that's what brings knowledge, that is what brings notice, it is what brings our reputation. So one of the things that the acquisition community has an obligation and an opportunity to do today, and one of my provocations to everybody is, what does that synergy mean for this community? Does it mean just coming together and talking with each other, or does the synergy then produce something? So we have a great deal of work that is going on in the ARP world, and NPS's Acquisition Research Program is a pioneer in that kind of acquisition research. We do all kinds of things. We do program management, contracting, financial management, logistics, cost and pricing, and all kinds of other work. But what is it that kind of work then produces? So the synergy is important, not just for the knowledge sharing, but for the deliverables that it has a potential and, frankly, the time to do. So we are a founding member of what David talked about, this new Acquisition Innovation Research Center. The center was of course a product of DoD and Congress, as Dave has said. But what are out of the 5 areas that the AIRC, the AIRC, the AIRC has identified as focused research, 3 of them are about people: workforce upskilling under continuous change, management and business knowledge representation for decision making, and aligning workforce and organizational incentives for agility and innovation. Those are 3 of the 5. That's about people. So one of the challenge that I would have. So a second provocation is this: if we have a synergy that is going to try to deliver, and we know that the valley of death is there, then one of the issues is to think about acquisition as an ecosystem and a process. So Dave and I have had this conversation, and as I always do with Dave, he taught me a lot. But we talked about Aegis and about the Navy nuclear force. And not only did they talk about buying things and procuring things and acquiring things, they were also conscious of the human capital investment that was a requirement to make those things work. And I would say that part of the valley of death, part of it is that we have not invested adequately in how to put people in the entire chain that then produces things. So my challenge to all of us here is to produce actionable results for our sponsors, for the warfighter, for anybody who is involved in the public sphere of acquisition, is how do we produce results? And we need to be mindful that requires us to really understand the other factors that come into acquisition. So yes, it is about legislation and about the processes. It also is how we understand modeling and simulation and the models that we use. Are they relevant? Are they agile and flexible so that they give us current answers? We need to understand how AI plays into all this and analytics and data. And all of those things, part of the inherent piece of all this is understanding the informed aspects of the theme. So synergy, how do we come together to produce real things and inform change? How do we understand the intelligence in front of us and the information in front of us to make change real and enduring? We are delighted and honored to be able to be the host of this event. And I will be listening in as my schedule will allow. But I would say to everybody, we're all part of this. This is a team sport, and we all are playing our positions. And we need to be really good at the position we play in order to win. And right now, the competition is about speed. It's about relevance. It's about application. It's about real things in order to ensure that not only is the technology used well and right, not only is it developed and deployed, but that those who are making the decisions about what technology and how it is employed are informed and are working with each other synergistically to make things work. That is America. That is us. And our obligation is also our opportunity to make a real difference. So thank you for being here. I look forward to hearing all of our leaders, and I look forward to hearing the after action here. Dave and I are going to be talking about how to make this work now, take the leap to the next place within Navy and DoD. So with respect, I will get off the stage now. And again, Dave, thanks for you and your team's leadership. And I look forward to a great day.
Thank you, President Rondo. Thank you. It was excellent work. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Ms. Stacy Cummings, Acting Undersecretary of Defense, Acquisition and Sustainment. Another pioneering woman in the Navy, where Admiral Rondeau blazed a trail on the uniform side. Stacy has been blazing a trail on the civilian side. She's worked at NavAir, at SPAWAR, Department of Transportation. She was the PO of Healthcare Management Systems, a challenging job. So she embodies the true concept of SESs, Freudian slip there, SESs that are capable of functioning across multiple agencies and multiple disciplines with a focus on acquisition. So she's flexible, adaptable, and has been successful in all of her tours. Her last job was Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Acquisition, working for Kevin Fahey. Should get a medal for that. Hopefully you did. And I worked with her closely when she was at SPAWAR and at when she was working for Ms. Lord. If you don't know it, you should. She did all the push-ups and sit-ups to create adaptive acquisition. Everybody else talking all the nice talk. She's the one breaking arms and making things happen. So that's her baby all the way. And again, if you don't know it, she led the charge of the department when COVID-19 first broke out. The DoD response across the board was led by Ms. Cummings superbly. I was heavily involved in that while I was at DCMA, twice daily phone calls every day, Saturdays and Sundays. And I would be true that we were making it up as we're going along, but I think it went well, focused on the industrial base and keeping people healthy, and I think she achieved that objective completely. And as I said, she comes to us today as acting Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. So thank you, Ms. Cummings, for coming, and over to you.
Good morning, and thank you, Dave, for that pretty amazing introduction. Also, thank you to President Rondeau and the NPS Acquisition Research Program for inviting me to speak to you today. The Acquisition Research Symposium is a vital event for exchanging ideas and facilitating dialogue between scholars and acquisition policymakers. So I'm very honored to be able to address such an esteemed group of thought leaders and practitioners. As Dave pointed out, we've had to make a lot of changes to the way we gather and exchange ideas in light of the pandemic. You can't even imagine how much I wish I was in Monterey right now, overlooking the bay and hearing the seals and otters. And I applaud the NPS team for enabling us to safely gather as a virtual forum. And I look forward to visiting Monterey as soon as I possibly can. I'd like to kick things off today by going over some of the priorities and goals that the President and the Secretary of Defense have recently announced. In March, the White House released the Interim National Security Guidance, which focuses on renewing America's advantages, and Secretary Austin has offered strategic guidance and clear priorities for the department. These top-line priorities, which include defending the nation, taking care of our people, and succeeding through teamwork, touch everything we do in acquisition and sustainment. And we are following them closely to ensure that our efforts are well aligned. Embedded in these priorities are calls for innovation and modernization, as well as enhancing and maintaining force readiness. Keeping pace with advanced and persistent threats in today's dynamic environment depends on taking a hard look at our acquisition portfolios and ensuring we have the right balance of capabilities for the future. Simply stated, our ability to achieve all of these priorities depends on getting acquisition and sustainment right. To that end, we in A&S are committed to continuing the strategic direction of the Adaptive Acquisition Framework, which I will call in the future AAF. As some of you already know, our acquisition system had evolved into a one-size-fits-all model for acquisition programs that, while tailorable, often resulted in a checklist approach and could be susceptible to prescriptive processes and rarely enabled speed. For the 100 of our largest programs at the time of that policy, the median duration from milestone B, which is the decision point to enter development of a program, and is generally considered the start of a program of record, to initial operating capability was nearly 8 years. So we really needed to build a more lethal force and speed the delivery of capability to the warfighter. In other words, DoD acquisition needs to move at the speed of relevance. At the time, we also realized that we needed to empower acquisition and sustainment professionals to think critically and tailor their strategies to quickly address warfighter needs. Despite unprecedented challenges facing the department and our nation, 2020 was an extremely productive year for our team. The Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Acquisition published 13 policies as part of a comprehensive redesign of the 5000 series acquisition policies. The redesign culminated in the publication of the DoD Directive 5000.01, the overarching policy that describes the principles governing the defense acquisition system. This overhaul has been the most transformational change to acquisition policy in years. We anticipate these new policies will have enduring positive effects on the way we acquire and sustain warfighter capabilities into the future. The 5000 rewrite was the decomposition of a large policy document into 6 clear, distinct, and separate pathways known as the AAF. The 6 adaptive acquisition pathways are urgent capability acquisition, middle tier of acquisition, major capability acquisition, software acquisition, defense business systems, and acquisition of services. By design, these pathways implement the 6 main tenets of the defense acquisition system: to simplify policy, tailor in approaches, empower program managers, facilitate data-driven analysis, actively manage risk, and emphasize sustainment. In addition to each of the AAF pathways, the 5000 series redesign also includes DoD instructions for overarching functional areas. These functional areas include engineering, test and evaluation, product support management, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about, cybersecurity, analysis of alternatives, cost estimating, intellectual property, tech and program protection, human system integration, acquisition intelligence, and information technology. This new approach will streamline traditional acquisition processes, providing our combatant commands and warfighters with greater lethality on the modern battlefield. One of the pathways we are most excited about is the software pathway, which is the AAF's newest policy and represents substantial departure from the department's usual way of doing business. Given that software is central to every major DoD mission and system, we must acquire, deliver, and sustain software with greater speed, agility, and especially cybersecurity. Stemming from the Defense Science Board and Defense Innovation Board's software acquisition and practices study, the software pathway is designed to enable continuous integration and delivery of software capabilities. Recognizing that modern software development is a continuum from development to production and throughout sustainment, this pathway is built upon industry best practices that enable innovation and swift delivery in response to conditions of uncertainty, such as rapidly changing user needs, disruptive technologies, and changing threats on the battlefield. By removing procedural bottlenecks and unnecessary regulatory bureaucracy, programs are pushed to embrace the goal of delivering capabilities with much faster cycle times, in 1 year or hopefully less, while emphasizing and ensuring cybersecurity. Acquisition and sustainment are equally important in providing the required warfighting capability when and where it's needed. Product support bridges the gap between these two critical functionalities. On average, 70 cents on the dollar over the life cycle of a program is spent on sustainment and operations. With this in mind, we must continue to emphasize the importance of designing for sustainment in order to reduce the demand for logistic support and maximize the availability of systems over their long life cycles. In other words, sustainment requirements need to be baked into the design of a material solution to deliver long-term operational availability and to better support warfighter requirements. We must transform from reactive maintenance to proactive and predictive maintenance. A few examples: we need to consider how the industrial base will change as the nation transitions to a zero greenhouse gas economy, and how those changes are going to impact our acquisition decisions. We know that large segments of the commercial automotive sector have made commitments to move to all-electric vehicles. We in the acquisition community need to ask, what does this mean for the availability of internal combustion engine components and our ability to maintain those systems in the future? In August of 2020, my office published a major revision to the DoDI 4151.22, Condition-Based Maintenance Plus for material maintenance. CBM Plus is the cornerstone of DoD's strategy to shift weapon system sustainment from reactive to predictive maintenance approaches. It describes diagnostics, prognostics, and health management techniques that program managers and sustainment professionals can design into systems upfront to improve operational availability and reduce lifecycle costs. Through a combination of predictive maintenance, enabling technologies, and data analytics, CBM Plus strategies will transform sustainment to achieve better performance and affordability. Some of the areas where planning for sustainment is sometimes lacking include acquiring or establishing agreements to access necessary technical data, provisioning and cataloging spares, establishing organic repair capabilities, particularly the commodities workloads on time to ensure operational availability, new or modernized depot maintenance facilities and equipment that reduces repair cycle times, organic software engineering and testing capabilities, and finally, acquisition of the appropriate engineering and logistics data. To mitigate these challenges, my office is in the process of publishing the DoD Instruction 5000.91 Product Support Management for the Adaptive Acquisition Framework. This instruction lays the foundation for planning and managing product support in each of the AAF's 6 pathways. It details the statutory, directive, and regulatory product support requirements, and it enables tailored product support solutions for each pathway. With the ability to tailor product support solutions, program managers and product support managers are better postured to deliver the designated operational readiness with the lowest operating and support costs. My office is also in the process of standardizing sustainment health metrics across the DoD, and we're revising the DoD Instruction 3110.05 Readiness-Based Material Condition Reporting. This instruction is DoD's authoritative material readiness reporting guidance that standardizes key performance metrics across equipment categories and provides a common framework for measuring readiness. It leverages the collective work accomplished by the services and OSD to reform logistics for better performance and affordability. This and other ongoing initiatives will provide a lexicon and common metrics for measuring and reporting the status of DoD sustainment enterprise weapon systems across the department. Ultimately, these changes will better enable the services to target the most promising systemic costs and material readiness drivers. Much like product support, we need to build cybersecurity into our systems as well. The new DoD instruction for cybersecurity, the DoDI 5000.90, was published on December 31st. We expect this policy to provide the acquisition community with consistent guidance to implement appropriate cyber processes and practices for every acquisition throughout the supply chain, regardless of which pathway is used. Cybersecurity is a foundational aspect of any acquisition, and it cannot be traded off for cost, schedule, or performance. Therefore, this new policy will ensure that cyber hardening is designed in at the beginning of a program and ties in closely to the criticality of securing the defense industrial base. The adaptive acquisition framework pathways are beginning to be used in earnest across the defense acquisition enterprise, and we're actively establishing data and analysis capabilities to measure the effectiveness of the AAF. While it's still too early in the implementation process for performance metric results, we are already seeing a number of programs leveraging the AAF as it was intended in order to improve acquisition outcomes. There are currently 70 programs using the middle tier of acquisition, 56 are rapid prototyping, and 14 are rapid fieldings. The Army's Integrated Visual Augmentation System, or IVAS, is one such program that has used middle-tier authorities to shave significant time from the schedule, streamlining metrics to better inform decisions and reporting, and providing greater flexibility to manage risk. IVAS is a 28-month rapid prototyping effort that is leveraging commercial technology into government needs and standards to respond to an erosion in close combat capability relative to pacing threats identified in the National Defense Strategy. IVAS used other transaction authorities to competitively award 15 firm fixed price agreements to a combination of traditional and non-traditional vendors. When coupled with the application of middle tier authorities, the program accelerated the development process by years as compared to the department's traditional way of doing business. IVAS's success using the rapid prototyping pathway ultimately led to its entrance into the MTA rapid fielding pathway in December of 2020. Now, going back to software, we have 16 early adopter programs that are putting the software pathway to use since the DoD instruction 5000.87 was published in October. All of these programs were started using previous acquisition models and are transitioning to the software pathway. We are excited for metrics and assessments to start coming out of these programs, but I will say that the early anecdotal trends have been very encouraging. For more on IVAS and the other programs that are using the adaptive acquisition framework, I encourage you to check out the DAU Powerful Examples Library on www.dau.edu. You can find it right there on the homepage. The adaptive acquisition framework is a good example of culture changing throughout DoD, both on the acquisition side and the training side. The adaptive acquisition framework is an interactive model that is easy to use and has everything acquisition professionals need in one place. DAU worked diligently to make this happen, creating something more robust and easier to use than a giant poster or a 1,300-page book that was rarely able to be kept up to date. This is a great demonstration of how training is moving towards a more virtual environment and taking advantage of technology to increase student throughput and give the acquisition workforce instant access to the latest information and policy. Now I'd like to turn to our acquisition workforce and culture in more detail. The DoD's acquisition professionals are critical to ensuring our military is ready to fight today and in the future. Institutions such as the Navy Postgraduate School and the Defense Acquisition University are vital resources for training, connecting, and empowering our workforce. As most of you are probably aware, all physical DAU locations had to close on March 13th of 2020 to curb the spread of COVID-19. In spite of this, DAU was able to preserve over 80% of student capacity by converting classroom courses very quickly to virtual offerings. To date, DAU's actions have ensured more than 30,000 workforce members were able to receive necessary training. DAU also increased the number of short, topical webcasts that they offered in fiscal year 2020 by 250% and added online workshops. These online offerings have reached more than 28,000 live attendees. Webcasts, workshops, and webinars are constantly happening. So again, I encourage you to visit dau.edu for more information and to join the conversation. Getting to this point did not happen overnight. DAU has been on a steady journey of transformation for several years. They have moved from a schoolhouse teaching in-person classes to a powerful platform connecting you to the tools, resources, and training you need to make sound acquisition decisions today and in the future. So if you haven't experienced DAU in a few years, I encourage you to register for a class or an online module and experience how DAU has changed for yourself. Beyond enhancing access to training, DAU has also been changing the way that they require certification training and increasing different types of learning options. Specifically, DAU's credentials program provides responsive and timely learning experiences that participants can self-select in order to grow and deepen their skills. By offering learning in smaller, more job-specific credentials, DAU is aiming to help DoD evolve beyond today's 3-level certification framework and more effectively meet the intent of the Defense Acquisition Workforce Improvement Act, or DAWIA. The result is that personnel are better prepared to perform their jobs and can get the additional training they need and less of what they don't need at a much faster rate when job requirements change. The credential program, which was initially piloted in October of 2019, has helped train nearly 11,000 people to date. DAU has released a total of 11 credentials, which cover acquisition law and policy, agile DoD team members, cybersecurity for program managers, data analytics for DoD acquisition managers, digital engineering for the DoD consumer, foundational intellectual property, information technology lifecycle support, introduction to risk, issue, and opportunity management, services acquisition team member training for acquisition professionals, and services acquisition team member training for non-acquisition professionals. At this time, 30 additional credentials are in development. In addition to the DAU credentials program, ANS participated in the inaugural Public-Private Talent Exchange, or PPTE, led by the Human Capital Initiative in 2019. As context, Section 1104 of the 2017 National Defense Authorization Act provided the Secretary of Defense the authority to establish 6-month PPTEs between the private sector and the department employees in order to facilitate exposure to the partner side, their business culture, how decisions are made, operations, and challenges. The 2019 cohort was comprised of 13 participants, 6 from government, 7 from industry. And in 2020, ANS led and hosted the second cohort, which had grown to 18 participants, 13 from government and 5 from industry. We've received feedback from participants, and we learned that these exchange experiences have transformed their understanding and perspective on the DoD industry partnership. After completion of the program, these ambassadors have returned to their home organizations, shared their experiences with peers and chain of command on the value of their exchange experiences. This year, the program is planned for a fourth quarter start, taking into consideration feedback from industry and prudent consideration of COVID-19, as well as lessons learned from the 2020 exchange. Congress has shown continued high interest in the program, and the recent FY21 NDAA specifically noted that the program can be valuable across DoD components and to the department's efforts towards building artificial intelligence experience and other modernization priority capabilities. We in ANS strongly encourage expanded participation from our components and industry partners so we can continue and enhance this win-win exchange. It is critically important that we in the department continue to leverage ideas from outside our normal DoD ecosystem in order to help us meet our national defense objectives. Last fall, as Dave mentioned, we established the Acquisition Innovation Research Center, or ARIC, to improve acquisition outcomes through innovation and evidence-based decision-making, bringing together stakeholders within the extended defense acquisition enterprise, thought leaders throughout government and industry, and researchers across academia. ARIC creates an ecosystem that uses innovative academic analysis and policy alternatives to infuse the agility and speed needed to keep pace with the rapid increase of technological advancements critical to our warfighters. ARIC recently held its inaugural Acquisition Innovation Forum, where over 70 key innovation and research topics were identified to support the department's acquisition innovation efforts. These ideas form a broad agenda for informing and engaging a wide community of academic professionals and innovation practices, as well as to seed academia with topics for further research, pilots, models, and demonstrations. In that same vein, the community of researchers and practitioners gathered today at this forum is providing innovative ideas that will improve acquisition outcomes, shape policy and practice, and help us address our toughest challenges. And so before closing, I'd like to leave you with a few thoughts on some of the ideas we're looking at where additional acquisition research is needed. The first topic of interest is the planning, programming, and budgeting execution requirements process for successful acquisitions. As you know, innovation is not effective in isolation. And while A&S continues executing innovative efforts in conjunction with the services, the efforts fall largely within the purview of what A&S controls and oversees. To realize meaningful, innovative changes across the larger acquisition enterprise, future efforts must be holistic across the department and encompass the full breadth of requirements development, portfolio assessment, and major capability acquisition. The second topic is modular open system approaches. While designing systems with modular open approaches is not necessarily new, doing so is more important than ever and must be further emphasized. Effective application of a modular open systems approach can lead to significant cost savings, schedule reductions, and opportunities for technical upgrades, refreshes, and interoperability. Much work remains with respect to integrating technical requirements with contracting mechanisms in order to support more rapid evolution of capabilities throughout the lifecycle of a product. A third area of research I'd like to emphasize is digital acquisition and engineering. The complexity of our own systems and system of systems, emerging threats, and the challenging socio-technical operating environment require a fundamental change to the way we develop and acquire weapon systems and their supporting technologies. DoD is committed to digital engineering efforts to drive agility and more informed acquisition decision-making. In addition to modernizing the department's digital engineering capabilities to include fully digital programs, we are in critical need of standards that will enable collaboration. We are also emphasizing metrics. As I mentioned earlier, the department is actively establishing data and analytic capabilities to measure the effectiveness of the adaptive acquisition framework and position the department's data assets for enterprise-level strategic insight and decision-making on acquisition program portfolios. We have prioritized 3 foundational capabilities to support the adaptive acquisition framework pathways: data standards, a common data framework, and an analytic framework. While work remains to fully mature a comprehensive performance management program of iterative processes to measure the performance and effectiveness of organizational goals, policies, and processes, we want to further our goal of improving acquisition outcomes for the department informed by metrics. Culture and risk should also play an important part in future research. Often, there's a culture of risk aversion as leaders are hesitant to change or abandon unsuccessful strategies for a variety of reasons, including sunk costs. And we're working hard to change this. It is important to recognize that not every effort or program is going to be successful, and leaders must be comfortable having uncomfortable discussions on program restructuring and potentially cancellation should that be in the best interest of the government. Additionally, I'd like to note, as the Secretary has outlined, that diversity and equity are strategic imperatives and critical to mission readiness. We are committed to cultivating a more diverse and equitable acquisition workforce, as well as industrial base, to include small minority-owned and women-owned businesses. Finally, we are interested in meeting one of the Secretary's other strategic objectives of mitigating climate impacts and understanding how they will affect acquisition programs. Climate is a very large priority for the Secretary and the department writ large, and we are moving to a single unified view of energy as a critical enabler of military capability. To maintain the ability to operate in a changing climate, the department must ensure combat forces are capable of functioning under the most extreme and adverse weather conditions. This means we need to assess our current equipment with a projected lifespan past 2035 to be sure it can operate reliably in a climate-changed environment. This also means we need to ensure resilience of our supply chain to avoid disruption of mission-essential products. Climate change data and information will be incorporated into all acquisition efforts to adequately consider future operating conditions. While the exact form and timing are taking shape, it's clear that our major suppliers to the federal government should increasingly consider the greenhouse gas emissions and climate impacts of their impacts on the operations, on their operations and systems. Before I wrap up, I just want to say thank you again to President Rondeau, Dave Lewis, and the team at NPS Acquisition Research Center for hosting this event and inviting me to kick it off today. With that, I'll turn it back over to Dave for the Q&A. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Ms. Cummings. That was awesome. We have a pile of questions. I'll start if you don't mind. First, a couple of questions. Let me get on screen here. First, a couple of questions about government certification. First one is, what is the envisioned role of government test organizations, services, DET&A, DOT&E in software acquisition via the software acquisition pathway? If you could address that.
Yeah, what a great question. So interestingly enough, or timely enough, I did actually testify before a subcommittee of Senate alongside Ray O'Toole, who is acting Director of Operational Test and Evaluation. And this is one of the things that we talked about. So first, one of the policies, one of the DoD 5000 series of policies that was released last year was an integrated test and evaluation policy that was meant to drive developmental and operational test synergies. So a lot of times we think about our testing capability as being linear or serial in nature. And what the Director of Operational Test and Research and Engineering last year realized and documented was the need to, as much as possible, take advantage of information and insight, regardless of who performed the test, for the purposes of validating the capability. And so that new policy provides an opportunity for program managers to develop test strategies in coordination with their operational testers, developmental testers, and contracting testers in order to bring together the appropriate level of evidence to ensure that we're delivering the right capability to the warfighter. That is even more important in the area of software. And so the Congress has encouraged us to, as much as possible, reduce the timeline for how quickly we're releasing software. And we simply can't keep up the pace of the demand from our user if we have a very serial process of testing. First, contractor-led testing, then developmental testing, then operational testing. We also can't continue to look at testing as being something that is only done in a physical environment. And so for software, what we're encouraging is program managers to work with their developmental testing and operational testing team to maximize automated testing. So basically, you validate that your automation is valid. So you go through that validation process, which creates the evidence for the testers to say that the product is meeting requirements, whether those requirements are cyber in nature, operational in nature, reliable, all the illities that we very much care about. And both the developmental test policy leaders as well as the operational test policy leaders are committed to create policy, but also to implement policy that encourages and allows us to take advantage of technology for automated testing and integrated testing. So great question. Thank you for asking that. I encourage us in the acquisition community to continue to challenge ourselves and our stakeholders in the test community to do just what I said, which is embrace automation, embrace integrated testing, and test to create the evidence, not test to test, right? To create the evidence that allows us to give the warfighter the capabilities that they deserve. So thank you for that question.
Excellent. That was an anonymous question. The next question I have is not anonymous, but it's along the same lines. Jackson Barnett asking the timeline for compliance to the cybersecurity maturity model certification. Is the SecDef's review done? If so, what were its findings that you are working on. And I know you and I both claim parentage of that process. So dear to my heart, certainly. So
Indeed. So the cybersecurity and security and resiliency of our defense industrial base is a very high priority for the department. Recent events have told us that that a checklist approach to cybersecurity is insufficient, and we can see examples of that in the news on a daily basis, including over the weekend, which is having a significant impact on the nation with a recent ransomware attack. And so cybersecurity of the defense industrial base continues to be a strong emphasis. Based on the way the question was asked, clearly the attendee has seen that we are doing an internal review of the cybersecurity maturity model. And the reason we're doing that is we want to make sure, just like any other policy or program, that we got the right level of implementation, and that we're very much considering the impact to small, medium-sized businesses. And so we have gone through the internal process. We're in the process of reviewing and analyzing the findings. And I look forward to communicating the results of those findings once we've had a chance to analyze them and see what the implications of any recommendations will be on the program.
Excellent. Another question from John, or a question from John Camp. Good morning. I'm looking forward to the new sustainment instructions. Do you have an estimated publish date?
I too am looking forward to that. We actually did. We did decide earlier this year to do one more review internally because we wanted to make sure that the policy was absolutely in alignment with our tailor-in processes. And so I actually recently spoke to the person who's helping us do that review, and I expect that that will be forthcoming within the next month or two. We have already done that, one more internal look, and so I think that we'll be seeing that in the next month or two. So thank you for that question.
Great. So I have a question from me. As a pioneering woman in the field of engineering and acquisition, do you have any advice for new entrant women engineers, acquisition professionals, as they come into this field, either through the government or academia or with contractors? Did you develop any particular skills or techniques or advice that you would want to pass on to your proteges?
So I would love to. Thanks. So a couple of things. The first is I would encourage all of you to think about diversity of experience. And so one of the things that I really valued of my experience when I was working for the Navy was the ability to move into different functional areas. And so I was able to work on the F-18 and the V-22. I was able to go to SINCPAC Fleet and see the results of our work from an operational perspective. I worked in technical data, which of course has really served me well in this time of intellectual property and tech data rights being so important. I kind of upended and transformed my career multiple times throughout the last 20 some years, and including leaving the Department of Defense to go to the Department of Transportation and then coming back. So diversity of experience, I think, is very important. Diversity, I already mentioned how important diversity of teams are. My other piece of advice is two things. One, tell people what you want. If there's an experience that you think you need, go out and get it, but tell people what you're trying to do and they will help you. And then the second is don't wait until you think you're 100% qualified for a job to apply for it. I have famously, for some people, said that I haven't been qualified for a job that I've on day one that I've entered in a decade. Now, I was very competent in my jobs, and I appreciate, Dave, you saying that I've been successful. I was certainly competent. But I didn't come to every single job on day one with every single bit of knowledge and skills that I needed to be successful. But I came with a series of experiences and executive leadership competencies that allowed me to go in and be successful in that job. And so don't wait until you've gotten every single piece of knowledge and experience to apply. We hire people and we promote people based on their potential and their skills and knowledge that they will bring to the team in the organization. So don't wait, apply. And then my follow up to that is that if you do apply and don't get it, ask why, figure out what skill it is that you need, and then take a path to get that skill and then apply again. So that is what I encourage everybody, whether you are coming into the organization recently or if you've been in the organization for decades like I have. Take some chances, and I assure you, you will have much more fun as well that way.
That's excellent advice. Thank you very much. We're out of time. So again, I thank you very much, Ms. Cummings, for sharing your time with us, sharing your advice, and giving us an update. And I encourage you to come to follow-on sessions, attend as many sessions as you can. We do have coffee breaks and we have student poster time. So it's a great opportunity for you to learn what other people are doing in the acquisition arena, right from the deck plates, if you will. So, all right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I wish you a wonderful day out there on the rainy, cold East Coast.